Hey, welcome back. So our final invited talk of today is from Darminder Ghataoura from Fujitsu and from University of Manchester, who's going to talk about what are the barriers for closer human-machine teaming. Over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Magnus, for the introduction. So hopefully, my talk is only be focusing about 20 minutes, because I think it's more useful if we have a bit of a closer interaction about this topic in general. Again, not very technical. It's going to be very high level, because I want to introduce the concept about human-machine teaming, and some of you already might know what that means. But what I would like to do is essentially talk about where we are currently with the view of applying AI machine learning in data science and in enterprise and in organizations. So predominantly our methodology for working with AI and machine learning is a data-driven methodology. So we apply a data-driven methodology to some sort of decision-making process. So in very loose terms, a decision-making process kind of fits into sort of four parts. One is the perception part, which is I need to measure something about the environment that I'm going to be operating in or making decisions about. I then need to understand something about that, and then from there, make some decisions and act on those decisions. So from a data-driven perspective, when we think about the environment that we're going to be moving into and make decisions about, we then need to measure that environment. So we collect data about it. And that data can be multimodal. It can be text, audio, video, image, and increasingly I don't like to use the word big data, but big data. One of the things about big data is it's multimodal. It's heterogeneous. So if I were to apply that same methodology to maybe a conceptual scenario here in this room, if I was going to create some sort of decision-making system for me to measure the engagement of the audience in this room today, I might want to measure some sort of measurement that's going to make me aware whether my talk is inspiring or something engaging. So I look to receive that data from the likes of yourselves in this room, consented of course, to actually understand, I might want to measure it from the specifics of how many yawns do I receive in a minute or so, or do people start looking at their phones and that kind of level of engagement. Perceived environment, make some understanding about it, some understanding about whether what I'm trying to achieve as my objective function is making sense, and then I make a decision and act on it. That's data-driven. Now, my view is that the data-driven methodology is now moving more closely to what we call an AI-driven methodology. Now, what that means in a very broad brush is that we are moving towards more of a cognitive aspect of how we make decisions. So applying the same framework, perception, understanding, decision, and act, but really understanding where certain strengths and weaknesses lie within that decision-making process. So we all recognize that AI has certain strengths over humans. That's been proven to some degree. We all recognize that some decisions can be given to the AI to make decisions for us. So what would be that sort of collaboration between us as humans and machines? And what does that mean? So it's moving away from the aspect of understanding it as pure objective functions in a typical way. We want to maximize some sort of performance to give us the best accuracy on a machine learning model. Turning it upside down to think about, okay, how can I incorporate the human into that decision-making process or design making and design phase? So the point here is that it's about recognizing both humans and AI are both processes in that data-driven decision-making process with different abilities. And so it's more of a collaboration, a human-machine teaming collaboration. So where are we today in terms of that human-machine teaming concept? So as I said, intelligent machines are essentially excellent tools, but not teammates. And therefore, we've got a couple of examples here. We've got Alexa, well-known Alexa example there. We've got now drones. I think Amazon announced quite recently they'll be starting to use drones for deliveries in certain areas. You've got robotic hoovering up your your living room. But essentially, these examples are all task-driven, objective function. And basically, the objective function is designed to maximize some performance. And therefore, that AI system delivers that performance. So what we need to understand is that these tools lack kind of the attention to human user, kind of lack that communicative, cognitive capability to kind of interact with the human. So really trying to give that user experience back to the human, trying to give that ability for the human to become more immersed into that sort of augmentation process. And really that's the key thing here. It's about recognizing, as I said, that AI and humans have different capabilities. What can we do as a society in general that will increase the productivity as we have in society? So if we thinking about productivity as a country, what could we do to enhance some of those processes that we do as humans, things that we take for granted, kind of release our capability to do other interesting things? And this is where I would like to kind of draw 4 distinctions about where we can start to collaborate more closely with machines. And there's 4 levels. First level is more about the capture, understanding the data, the pattern recognition. The second part is really utilizing machines to become more creative, to generate hypotheses, different ways in which we might want to ask questions about the environment that we want to make decisions about, and then testing those at scale. And thirdly, about how we can better build systems which the AI recognizes how we as humans operate and make decisions, they're mental models. So moving forward, so essentially we need to become teammates. I think that's the first thing that we need to draw on. These machines that we will be teammates with need to be both flexible and adaptive to the states of the human teammate and as well as the environment. So as a machine, they've got a quite difficult job. They both need to recognize the state of the human, but also the environment in which that machine exists in. And it's really down to 3 capabilities, intentions, and generalizing to specific learning experiences, entirely new situations. So I draw attention to the, you might have heard of the new model being released by DeepMind called Gato. It's essentially a multimodal, multitask, general policy type agent, which can perform multiple tasks based on it to learn on certain experiences. So they claim, well, they have proven it, that the Gato agent can play both Atari games, capture images, and do various robotic tasks commonly found in the real world. But again, is that truly a general learning experience? And again, how do you apply the Gato model to the human equation? How do you bring the human into this? And again, the Gato element doesn't incorporate that human experience, that ability to infer what the human is thinking about and how the human behaves. So I want to talk about it from the perspective of open challenges and things which we need to think about moving forward. So I've kind of labeled it in 2 axes. We've got the y-axis here. I've split it into kind of 2 parts. One centered around cognitive abilities and one on the actual specific abilities of the machine. And this common thing that kind of glues both human and machine together, that human-machine interaction, the ability for some sort of mechanism that allows both human to machine to share and communicate ideas. Now, what are the current states of interaction? That could be both a physical interaction between a human and an AI system in a physical sense. Soon to be digital twinning, let's see. Apparently the next 10 years, hopefully. There was a BBC article that mentioned that digital twinning is not too far away from that perspective. And then the highly claimed, highly hyped metaverse. There's another way of communicating and sharing both the interaction between human and machine. So there's this umbrella framework which is soon materializing in the next sort of decade or so about ways in which the human and machine were able to interact. Now, if that interaction was in place today, how would we be bringing in the machine abilities and the cognitive abilities to kind of make that happen? So for the machine side of things, we talk about it from the data fusion. So no, we recognize that AI is going to be there at speed and scale, making and fusing that data for us on our behalf. So perception and modeling, the environment itself, reasoning, problem solving, kind of common planning and common sense. And essentially understanding what data would be required to kind of facilitate that better interaction. So it's not us giving data to the machine to train on, essentially machines being able to reason what data would be applicable to their scenario and problem. We go to the other side, so that's the machine part, the machine ability. The other part is more about the human side, but within the machine realm itself. It's about human models of machines. So how do humans, what would be the models that we'd use as humans to understand how the machine is making mental and physical abilities, kind of abilities to make decisions, descriptions of those, and the level of transparency required. So we've got a lot of good work already happening currently around explainable AI, model interpretation. But again, it's really, that thinking is really coming from how the machine does it. It's not really incorporating what the human thinks is valuable. So it's really taking the concept of what kind of level of explainability interpretation do I require, and that transparency. And that kind of bridge between the two. So these are two things which are going to be flowing between each other, both the data and the perception of that data, to then how you explain and interpret that from a machine aspect, but for the human. We now go one stage further and go to the cognitive side. So we're now talking about abilities, about how we as humans think about how we make decisions. We have a number of cognitive processes which we rely on day in, day out, how we go about doing our business in the real world. So it's about thinking about how can machines incorporate that domain expertise, that human knowledge within their decision-making process. To what fidelity, to what aspect do the machines need to model and represent the physical capabilities and minds of humans given the demands of the tasks. And this concept about theory of mind, is such a broad concept, but some of this thinking around theory of mind applies here. It's about emotions, it's about our desires, our beliefs, our ways in which we incorporate certain things that we think we deem as important. And then really from the perspective of us as humans, when we come to an environment like I'm in today, and I'm thinking about, what's the best way to interact with the audience? I've got to think on my feet a little bit. I've got to think about ways in which I can engage my audience, make them more interactive in the topic I'm thinking about. It's the environment that I place myself in and the mental model I have in my back of my mind. Some of the heuristics that I learned over the years of experience presenting to audiences and taking those to new audiences and applying those. Those are mental models about how I go about doing certain things, presentations being one of them. And so how do we learn from that experience of how we do as humans and apply it to the human in the machine sense? And these are open challenges, as I said, because none of these answers or none of these questions or none of the ways in which we think about these things have been done. There's certainly work happening, and there's certainly models and constructs and techniques available currently which can allow us to model some of these concepts. And we talk about ontologies, we talk about sort of linked web in that sense. We talk about, learning about how we can represent knowledge and data as relationships, and how those relationships connect with each other. And it's really then bringing that into more and more of a concept and making it, in a practical sense, applying it to the real world problems that we're going to be facing. Now, why is human machine teaming quite important? So if I give some of my background, I come from defense. So some of the drivers about why human machine teaming is increasingly being talked about is because it's being constrained by resource. So there's not enough people within defense to do the really, really important things, the limited resource. So we need to really focus on areas where we can give those important tasks to people to do the really, really important things that they need to be focusing on, having an ability to then have machines and augment that process so they're then released and then being able to do more important things. We talk about it from the enterprise perspective. There is a move now becoming more cognitive. The cognitive enterprise is the term. It's about making decisions and making sense of those decisions and perceiving the environment at pace, at scale and speed to outcompete your competitors. And it's really speed. If you can outcompete your competitors at speed and their ability not able to do that, then your ability to outmaneuver them and the competition, so their ability to replicate becomes much harder and expensive for them to do. So therefore you take out the competition. So this concept about augmenting the machine with a human is increasingly becoming more and more important. And I put the thing in the middle called calibrated trust. Now that's a thing I've come up with, but you know, I did the Google search calibrated trust and to see if any research has been done on it. But there is some sort of similar concepts. But what I'm trying to say here is that it's that constant learning between human and machine about the state of which the human is in, behavioral, performance, or psychological. And it's very difficult trying to measure each of those three things. In my view, it's very, very difficult. Because behaviors, attitudes, and desires change over time. So there is a dynamic thing here, an evolution of this concept with time. You know, it's not going to remain static. That's the main thing. And I think the main thing about trust here is making it at the suitable level that suits the human, which the machine is working for. And that's going to be different for every single human. You know, not to fit all for everyone. So that ability to be personalized, you know, we think about the likes of Amazon and, you know, Netflix recommending us movies. But again, it's still data driven and it's not really taking my emotions and my desires, what I'm thinking at the current point in time before I want to watch a movie. And that information about what I'm feeling and what kind of movie I like to have or watch hasn't been updated as a state model. So it's about understanding that psychological aspect. Performance is always geared towards giving you the best ability to work as a team. So we need to think about ways in which we can start to measure AI team performance. At the moment, with focusing more and more on aspects about improving machine learning accuracy, objective functions. You know, is there something, we've just had a talk before me, I think it was a student who talked about safe optimization. So we can sort of cater different ways in which we want to optimize machines. Safety, one of them. What would it mean for human machine teaming in the environment which that human machine team is going to operate in? So there's open-ended questions around those things as well. Some of the practical considerations here about so we talked about, you know, productivity. So, you know, human machine teaming is essentially a way in which we can improve that productivity. You know, the government national AI strategy, when you look at it, it's all about making data available, accessible, ready to be used for the basis of improving human productivity, getting better decisions into the society as a result. And of course, that's going to happen more and more with the digital twins. We've got a national digital twin program, which is looking at how we can digitize the UK essentially, but look at it from specific sectors which are going to be of national importance. We talk about rewards. So we talked about the objective function, the objective setting. I think I've already mentioned about that is machine or human driven. And we've got some really good esteemed panelists, speakers that came before me, but that know more about this particular topic around ethical risks. But the thing I'd like to maybe leave in your mind is that, you know, what would you do, you know, if you had a self-driving car had a steering wheel, you know, what would be the ethical risks around that? At what points in time would you safely give control to the machine, and at what point in time would you want the human to take back control? So that's an interesting dynamic when you look at it from the perspective of human machine teaming, because it's about saying who governs the relationship in that sense. And some of the areas that we're working on currently in Fujitsu is really focused around the safety aspects, predominantly because the AI systems that we work on and deploy to our customer need to be verified and made robust and tested to a lot of standards and verification and objectives. So we're working about how we can improve that through the case of stress testing models, for example, at scale. So we understand what the vulnerabilities are. And those vulnerabilities feed back into then understanding what regulation or standards do we need to put in place to ensure that particular system, once it's in operational use, is safe. Some kind of the current initiatives. So I draw attention to the Fujitsu one at the moment. We've got recently just launched an activity recognition, sort of emotional recognition system called ADSAI. We've deployed this in Japan, actually, from the perspective of sort of care in the home. So, you'd expect Japan's got a population, looking at ways in which you can bring care to the home. So how can machines be able to understand what behaviors they're currently looking at? And that's the kind of perception I was talking about, that human-machine teaming element. I put this one here, People for AI Guidebook. This is something which Google Brain Team are looking at, how they can develop best practices and examples in which you can co-create and design AI systems, but from a human perspective. So putting the human in the center and developing from that perspective. And as part of my role within the UK Trustworthy Autonomous Systems Hub, this is a really good project we've got going with Thales, TSTL, and Nottingham and Southampton, looking at how we can develop human swarm partnerships in a stream environment. So again, it's more defense focused. Apologize for the example, but again, you can imagine in the future, we'll be relying more and more on autonomous systems being deployed into environments or extreme contentious environments. And we need some sort of reliability and trust when we operate those systems in those environments. And what would that look like, especially from the perspective of swarm? So multiple systems, multiple drones, multiple autonomous vehicles in the operating environment, collaborating and communicating with each other. But again, focusing on what that means for trust from the human perspective. And that's just my that's my email address, and that's my LinkedIn. So if you want to get in contact, no worries. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.